you ready?
Yeah, sure.
I have no idea what we're going to say.
No.
I'm not planning this.
No.
Okay.
That's fine.
Let's go.
Howdy hi campers, welcome back to another video.
This week
on
Educating Ellie.
On Educating Ellie.
We are talking about the books that we actually liked at university.
That is a thing we're going to be doing.
Jamie went to university with me.
Yes.
Jamie.
Although we did basically none of the same modules.
We did one
apart
module.
From one compulsory module. That was it. So completely different taste in literature and books we liked at uni. Would you like to start?
Yes.
Kick us off.
So I'm going to start with this guy, Wilfred Owen. I have this book. This I've had since school actually, and I've never written in it because at school we weren't allowed to write in the books. I love Wilfred Owen poetry, and a lot of people find it very controversial. This idea that war poetry can only be a poetry of experience, and people like Jessie Pope who write, or sort of other women's era Britain maybe, who write poetry not from trench experience, can't be classed as war poets, and so it's controversial because of that view of war poetry that it's promoting.
That's interesting though, because then works about, say, the Vietnam War. Do you have to have served in the Vietnam War to have opinions on it? I would say no.
No, me too.
Yeah.
It's this idea of the trench lyric and war poetry, and whether they go together or whether they're separate categories.
What is he like to read a lot of?
Depressing.
Shirley Jackson, The Haunting of Hill House. I mean, the quote on the back is from Stephen King. Stepping into Hill House is like stepping into the mind of a madman, which I think is pretty fair actually. It's probably the first great American ghost story, first modern American ghost story. And what's so brilliant about it is so much of the haunting and the horror of this book comes from within the character's mind, the main character, who is called Elinor. And she is the very definition of an unreliable narrator.
Tell me about it.
All the haunting that goes on in the book seems to be directed at her, and you're not sure whether it's really happening or whether it's all exaggerated. As a result of that, it feels really claustrophobic, really, really creepy.
I have a question.
Yes.
When was it written?
It was written in the 1950s, I think.
Oh, okay.
1950s? Maybe 1960s. It's a masterpiece in creeping you out, and I would recommend anyone read it, really.
Feet in Chains by Kate Roberts, but translated into English by our one true lecturer, Katie Greenwich.
Yes,
She
correct.
taught us about this book. She translated it and then she made us all buy it. And if that isn't a great sales pitch, I don't know what is. We did Welsh literature. This is the only course.
The only module we did
together had a Welsh literature component. Yeah. We did Dylan Thomas, we did R.S. Thomas, we did all the Thomases.
Raymond Williams.
Yeah. And I didn't really like many of them. I didn't hate them.
Okay.
But I wasn't inspired, and then the first time I felt inspired, and I felt like an actual English lit student who had like an idea and an argument and things, was when I read this book, Feet in Chains, which is about a family in sort of the Snowdonia area, starting in the 1800s and moving throughout the 20th century. So a little bit like Kate Atkinson's Life After Life. I
read some of Feet in Chains. Never got round to finishing it, which is something that happens quite often in uni. But the one thing I remember thinking about it is how homely it is, but at the same time distinctly not homely. Like, again, a sort of sense, a completely different sense that something's not right.
And then, but it goes through the First World War, but there's this really sad moment where, like, in the favourite son goes off to war and doesn't come back. And there's like this really sad moment where they're sitting on the top of the mountain where the kids used to play, and their initials are scratched into a rock, and he's just not there and dead. Oh.
That's right. Okay.
I'm emotional now.
Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is actually not a book at all. It's a manuscript from the 14th century. It exists in one manuscript only. So if that manuscript had burnt in a fire, as the Beowulf manuscript once did, we wouldn't have Gawain and the Green Knight. It's a King Arthur story. So Sir Gawain is one of Arthur's knights.
He's the one who is in Merlin who was really fit.
Quite possibly. Gawain is like your perfect knight. A character so well known as being, you know, he's Arthur's go-to. It's written in Middle English, which is quite difficult to read.
Show the camera.
An example of how it's written. The aforementioned Green Knight, who is literally as he seems, he's not a knight dressed in green, he is a Green Knight.
Like
he is
alphabet in
like
Wicked.
Like imagine the Incredible Hulk walking into your Christmas feast. That's what we're talking here. He struts into the feast and challenges one of Arthur's knights and says, I'll let you strike me with one blow and I'll return it in a year's time. And Gawain wants to prove himself. He decides to take the Green Knight on his offer. I'm gonna swing this huge heavy weapon at the Green Knight, take his head off, he'll be fine. He'll never be around to give me the returning blow. So Gawain picks up the weapon, swings it at the knight's head, and lops it clean off. Green Knight picks it right back up.
Tis but a scratch.
Tis but a scratch, literally tis but a scratch, and says, I'll see you in a year's time. And there's a twist ending, which is actually pretty uncommon for a medieval text. They're usually pretty in and out. It is really worth reading because it is a jaunt.
Well, none of my books are merry or jaunty or medieval. The Hiding Place by
Trezza Azzopardi. Apologies, Trezza, if you're watching.
It's about a family in Wales, but this time in Tiger Bay in Cardiff, living through sort of, well, just in the period before the renovation of Tiger Bay. But the thing I like most about this book, I would say, is that a lot of the time, you know, when you're at uni and you get a course list, you know that the books are like, oh yeah, of course we're going to do Shakespeare, or of course we're going to do Dickens or T.S. Eliot or whatever. This was such a curveball book, I think, and this is just a really good book by a Welsh author. And it's different. My third choice is a book I don't actually have with me here, so I'm sure Elinor will edit a picture right there of the book that I've chosen, which is Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon. And Toni Morrison is fantastic, probably my favourite novelist of the 20th century. And I think what she does fantastically is she makes a book about identity and who you are and what your family history is. And doesn't reveal any of the facts that you need to get that identity. It keeps you waiting as long as it keeps the character waiting. The book ends sort of at a crossroads where he thinks he knows, but you can't really be sure what's myth and what's true because of the nature of losing your identity in such a way. And it's just so beautifully done, and the ending is one of the best endings of a book I've ever read. T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. This is a very fancy copy, and that is kind of the main reason why I've chosen it. It's actually the facsimile and the manuscripts of The Wasteland. It has all of T.S. Eliot's notes and all of Ezra Pound's notes, books that are pretty... And you're just going to hug it. I'm just going to hug it. You're just going to hug it for the rest of the video. That's okay. Hug it for the rest of the video. That's okay. Brilliant. My final honourable mention. Yeah. Just all of that. I had to mention it really. It's the complete works of Shakespeare. The first module I did was about Shakespeare's comedies. It was the first place I encountered Twelfth Night, All's Well That Ends Well, and Much Ado About Nothing, which is one of my absolute favourite of any art form ever. Mainly because Benedict and Beatrice are the best couple ever written. And a lot of female authors actually though, because my choices were quite female as well. It's because we're the most interesting sex. Sure, I'll let you have that. Yeah. I'll accept that. Every module has something to love. Everything. Even if it's just a phrase. And you can get something out of everything. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a great way to waste 3 years of your life. It really is. It really is. So, thank you ft.Jamie for being on, finally signing that, consent form. T-shirts will be available soon for pre-order with his face on, obviously. Yep. And see you next week, guys. Bye! If you like this video, then please do give it a like and hit the weird subscribe orb thing, which will be on screen somewhere. I'm not always here, but Ellie is, which is almost as good. Not quite. I mean, I am the talent, but she'll do, I suppose, if you've got nothing else to do.